Okay, it's a little after 10, tiny bit, 11 I mean. All right, so we're up to the 7th of April. And so we're doing modules 15, 16 and 17. So of course 15 is mostly theoretical. It's about the application layer protocols, so things like FTP and HTTP and DNS and things like that. Not a lot of labs in that for that, but anyway. And then, of course, network security fundamentals is how to, well, generic security information plus some tips on how to secure your Cisco devices, things like auto secure and other such things like that, as well as SSH, and I'll do a bit of a demo for SSH later as well. And the last one is build a small network, and so a bit of design information, plus there's information about different devices and things like that in it as well. And so now, of course, as you can see, the 28th of April, next time I see you, it's test day. So what I thought I'd do today is demo a trial test. And so, and of course, I'll throw in a bit of SSH in that as well, just to show you what quite possibly might be something to get a higher score for. So I have a packet tracer here. I also have a notepad. Don't do that to me, Windows. Now, so this packet tracer, we've got a router which has got 4 interfaces. Now, it's an older model router. It's an 1841. You'll notice that it has 0 gigabit Ethernet interfaces, but it has 2 fast Ethernet and 2 Ethernet interfaces. And so when you start if you were to configure this, you'd have to be careful. G000 is not going to work, but Ethernet would, or fast Ethernet. So that's something you've got to be careful of. Now, the instructions for this one are over here. And so the top is actually a note about what interfaces are fitted on the router. So, of course, on a real router, if you're a bit curious, you might want to do something like a show run or maybe show IP interface brief. That will actually tell you the interface names. And so that gives you a bit of a hint on what you'd need to do to configure them. So that's always a good idea if you're sitting down in an unfamiliar router, is maybe figure out what interfaces are on it. And so, of course, the first part of our Prac test is actually designing an addressing scheme. And so, up the top here, it actually specifies we're using 192.168.1.0. Of course, that's a /24 network. And so here it wants us to create 8 subnets. We're going to use 4 of them, 0, 1, 2, and 3, but we need to create 8 total. And so the first thing we need to do with that is figure out how many bits need to be borrowed. Now, of course, if we borrowed 2 bits, that's 2 to the power of 2. That's only 4 subnets you'll be able to create, and the requirements are 8. So that's not good enough. So 3 bits, 2 to the power of 3 equals 8. So that will make exactly 8 subnets. So because we've borrowed 3 bits, the 4th octet, instead of being a 0 on the subnet mask, would now, of course, have 3 ones in the mask in binary, which, of course, would translate to 224 for the 4th octet in the subnet mask. Now, as you can see, there are 5 bits left for the host section. And so doing the sums here, 2 to the power of 5 minus 2, 30 hosts per subnet you can use. The addressing space is 32, but of course there's those 2 addresses that are unusable for the subnet number and the broadcast. All right, so we've created 8 subnets now. So as you can see, I've actually specified them all. Just the first 4 subnets I've also specified the addresses that we're using. Because if you look back here, apply subnet 0 to the student network and assign the first usable address to the router. And so that's what we're doing here. And then subnet 1 is for the staff, subnet 2 is for the admin, and subnet 3 is for the management network. Now you need to create a VLAN, management VLAN interface on each switch and apply the second usable IP address. So that's why I've got the switch address here as being 1.2 for the first subnet. And then it also says the 3rd and 4th IP addresses are used for any PCs. And so that's why I've got host 1 and 2 there. So they're the 3 IP addresses for the first subnet will be used, at least in our example. So of course the next subnet will be 1.32, and so from there, so it's going to be 33, 34, 35 and 36 of the addresses that are going to be used. The next subnet is 1.64, and so 65 through to 68 are the addresses for that. And then subnet 3, it's 1.96, and so 97 through to 100 are the ones we're going to use there. Now the last 4 subnets needed to be available, but we're not using them in this today. So they might be for a different branch office or something like that. So they're there, and they're the subnet numbers, but they're not in use. All right, now, so that's the addressing scheme designed. And so now we need to look at what other things we need to do. And so here, you need to rename the student switch to be Stu Switch 1 and the star switch to be Star Switch 1, and the router needs to be Router 1. Give each connected port on the switches a meaningful description. You need to configure console, enable and VTY passwords on each switch and router. Use Cisco for all the passwords. Configure an appropriate message of the day banner on the router. Encrypt all plain text passwords to the Cisco Type 7 format, and you need to save the configurations on each switch and router. So I've made some configuration bits that will actually help us with that. And so I've set the enable secret to Cisco because that's one of the things it asked. I've also done the line console password to Cisco and the VTY passwords to Cisco as well. So that's been done. It asked to encrypt it, so that's how we do that, of course, with service password encryption. We also wanted a banner message of the day, so that command will achieve that. So that's many of them, and so it also wanted us to set host names. Now what I've done here is I've done the 3 commands for the 3 host names need to be set, and I've just commented them out, and I've just uncommented the first one. So that will actually work, and so I can actually reuse this on all the devices. That's why I've got it separate here. It's just that this is pretty much identical on all of them. And so here I've got this separate bit here just to implement the addressing section of what was required. So of course this relates back to this scheme up here. So the router is .1, .33, .65 and .97. And so you'll notice that's what the addresses are here, and they've all got that 27-bit mask. So there's another part we can do. Here I've actually got us setting up the VLAN 1 interface for that management interface. So I'm turning it on, and I've got a couple of alternate addressing settings there. I've got 34 and 33 set up at the moment. And remember, it wanted a description for all the switch ports that have hosts on them, and so again I could actually paste this into any of the switches and that'd work nicely because it's going to be pretty much the same. And here I've actually done the SSH part. Now it hasn't mentioned that, but when you do the practical test you'll probably have a merit section as well, so you get better than 60%. If you just do the pass section, you'll get 60%. There will be probably a couple of merit items. If you do one of the merit items, you'll get a credit score, so about 85 or something, and then if you do both of the merit items, you'll get 100% for the test, as long as everything's acceptable. So here I'm just doing this as a sample, and also because we talked about SSH in Chapter 16, and so I haven't demoed that yet, so I've killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Now, of course, the first thing that's required for Cisco or for a device to play with SSH is it needs a fully qualified domain name. Now, of course, I've already set the host name up here, so the router or switch or whatever we're going to set this on will have that. So, of course, that's the host name. It needs to have a fully qualified domain name, and so I'm setting that here. So it's going to be stewswitch1.cisco.com. So that does that. You also need to have a a local user database, and so I've done username admin secret Cisco. Now I could have done username admin password Cisco, but secret actually does an MD5 hash, as opposed to password. It would have just used that service password encryption bit, and it's not. I don't think it's even extra letters, so why not use a decent hash? And so that's what I've done there. Now, of course, once you've set the host name and you've got a fully qualified domain name, you can then create the key pair for it. And so that's the command that you do, and then the command will actually ask you a question. How many bits do you want to be the key size? And so we normally do 1024 if you've done any of the labs. So that's what I'll do. On Packet Tracer, I haven't ever gotten it to work in one line, so I'll actually just do that, and then I'll type in 1024 and let it finish. Then, of course, we need to use the line VTY command and do transport input SSH. So that will activate SSH. It will also block Telnet from connecting, because it's transport input SSH. I haven't mentioned Telnet, so Telnet will not be allowed. Now, you could do SSH Telnet if you want to permit Telnet, but really you shouldn't. Also, there is the option of transport input all, and then anything would work, but yeah, SSH I think is the better setting. So that's basically what we're going to do here today. So I'll set up the router first. So I'll do the first bit first, which is just all the passwords and a couple of other little things. I even make typos with pasting. Anyway, so we've see the commands that have gone through. You'll notice that the prompt is now router 1 instead of router, so the host name is set. We've got password encryption. We've got the Cisco for those passwords. I don't see any error messages, so that's all good news. All right, now, of course, we need to do this to get the addressing to work. Paste that in. Again, I can't see too many problems. Can't see any problems. And of course, we've got status messages that they've come up. So that's all very nice. So we're going to do show running to actually see what's in the config. So you can see that service password encryption is there now. Got a host name. It's got an enable secret with an MD5 hash. It's got the addressing that's been set on all the interfaces. As you can see, fast Ethernet for 2, Ethernet for the others. You can see the banner is there. And you can see that we have passwords for the console and the VTY lines. And they've been hashed with the dodgy Cisco hash. Okay, so that's a lot of what needs to be done. Now what I might do is I might do the first switch. So I'll comment that one out, uncomment that one. Paste that in. While I'm here, while I'm interfacing with this switch, I might as well put in these comments as well. So let's have a look at the show run there. So again, you can see the passwords and host names have all been set. You can see that the comment or the descriptions are now in the interfaces. And you can see that I've set the passwords as well, so that's all very nice. So let's go back up here. Rotate my comments around again a little more. Okay, that worked nicely. Don't see any error messages. Put the comments in. Now these ones are actually set up for this switch at the moment, so I might actually put the SVI configuration there as well. And so I've set the IP address to 34. The router is 33. Again, that's all come good, and we've got status messages for that. So let's have a look at the show run here. So again, password encryption, host name, passwords, comments, all looking good. The extra bit is we've got 34 for the IP address and 33 for the router. Got the Bannermot D in there. The passwords, that all looks really happy. So one thing I might try out, I've actually set this up now that I can telnet into it. So let's try it. Now, what address do I need for that host? 35. That'll work. So I'll just do it on this host here. Control V. Of course, we need 224 on the mask. Control V. And 33 is the router. All right, so let's try pinging first. Oh, another typo. Big surprise. 192.168.1.33 is the router. That's working nicely. The switch is 34. It's always slow with ARP, the switch. But now working nicely. That's nice. Let's have a little play with Telnet. 192.168.1.34. Of course, enter doesn't work. Cisco for a password. Hey presto, we're in. I can Telnet. Cisco for the enable password. Looking nice. So I can have a look at the switch. That's working quite well. Now that's just Telnet. So let's should read the questions, but let's try SSH. Didn't work. The current session has closed. You wish to re-establish a new session with the previous session options? No. So SSH isn't working yet because I haven't configured it yet. So let's try that. So of course it's already got a host name. The admin user account hadn't been created yet, but anyway, it doesn't have a domain name. We need to create the key. So what I'll do is I'll just do this first part here because I'll need to interact with the switch to get it to happen. As I said, it asks you for the size of the key basically. That's done. It's quicker on packet tracer than it is on a real device. It takes a little bit of time to create a key. It's non-trivial math. And so then I'll set up the line VTY to accept SSH only. So that seemed to work. Let's do a show run, see how we go. And so you can see that there's now this username admin with that MD5 hash. It's got the domain name in there. You actually don't get a lot else because the keys are all hidden. And so we've got IP addressing, we've got the banner, and we've got that transport input SSH only there. So that all seems to be working nicely. Let's see if we can SSH into it now. Oops, wrong window. 192.168.1.34. Admin user account exists now, so that'll help. Prompted for the password of Cisco. Have a look at that, we're in. And we've got that banner mot.d that appeared. That's nice. So if we then enable Cisco, all very nice. SSH is working a treat. All right. Now, I'll go in and try Telnet now. 192.168.1.34. And this, of course, should not work. And it does not work because SSH is the only valid input now. So, that's working nicely. So, that was pretty much all I was going to demo. I suppose I haven't really tested the routing yet. I haven't looked at the routing table yet either, have I? Show IP route. What's going on? Yeah, show IP route. Now this is an older router with an older version of the operating system. And so we don't get any of those L entries with this. I'm assuming it's version 12. I might do a show vert later. You just get the directly connected network entries. And so as you can see, it's /27 because that's the mask I defined. And so you can see the subnet 0, 32, 64, and 96 are in the routing table. So I suppose I should probably configure some hosts with some addresses and test that our routing works. That's probably not a waste of time. Now 35 is already, the host is already running, so let's try pinging that. 168.1.35. So, router's working nicely. So this one here, I think, is the next one. Copy. I think this needs this one. Okay. Ping from that subnet as well. That's working nicely. So the last subnet, let's put this address in. 97 for the router. Again, all very nice. So the routing is working. The addressing scheme seems pretty happy. So I haven't fouled that up. And so that is pretty much what is required, but a little bit extra if we talk about the SSH. So basically, of course, when you're doing this, you then maybe go through the list again, double check that you've, of course, implemented everything that's in the requirements. and then from there away you roll. So of course I haven't done the interface VLAN ones on those other 3 switches, but really it's just a bit of a rewrite of my little setup here to do that. And yeah.
So are you able to get a copy of that?
There already is a file
Okay.
on the network for that. What have I edited in this?
The notepad.
Yeah, I've got the notepad up there. I haven't got this demo, but I've actually put the document on the Cisco site. Now,
Cisco Networking.
yeah. So under the course, there's actually a folder called Trial Prac Test. And so there's a different practical test for you to play with. And this is the solution to class sample example, which of course is the one I've just done. So that file is...
You're recording this now.
I'm also, yeah, this is going to be a video online as well. Does anyone have any other questions at all?
This video, does it go in Flow or
It's going to be on YouTube.
on YouTube?
There will be links to it on Flow, but yeah, they're not quite so instantaneous. There's a bit of a process involved. So no other questions at all? Now, I've activated all the practice exams for you. So I'll just go back here. So all the chapter tests are running, of course, or the modules. Don't forget you need to do them before the test. There is also a feedback test, or whatever it's called, course feedback. You actually need to have done that before it will allow you to do the final test. So that is active, and it will be active until, for the next 3 weeks. And there is also a practice theory test that is active. That only allows me to activate that for a week. So I'm going to have to activate it again next week and the week following. I've already put reminders in my calendar. Hopefully I'll...
You just flick out a mail or something when you activate it?
Well, it's active now, but yeah.
Which one's the practice theory exam?
Sorry.
It's under the practice testing there. Practice exams. Practice final exam.
Oh, that's the one.
That is the theory. This is actually a packet tracer skills assessment that's available for you as well. You can play with that. It's not graded. It's just there. And of course, there's this one here, which is more like what the final assessment actually, the practical will be.
So which one expires in a week?
The theory.
The trial practical test. That's
Yeah, the theory is the one that expires in a week.
So a week from...
But it will be reactivated. But there might be the odd period on a Wednesday where it's not active.
So other than SSH, we shouldn't really cover much more.
Well, I'm going to say when it comes to merit, you know, I'd probably be looking at that security chapter and any of those secure activities. You might want to sort of familiarise yourself. So basically the merit, as I said, there'll be 2 merit activities. One, you know, if you complete one, you'll get roughly 85%, I think. If you, no, I think it'll be 80%, sorry, because it's 60 for a pass. 80% if you do one of the merit items. If you do both of them, you should get 100. So that's, but of course, you've got to pass the
second half.
You've got to pass basically that bit that I did before you can get any merit, of course. So you need to show that you're competent at these things.
Does it tell you like how you like in the...
It won't score you because I'll be sending you an email with everyone will get their own addressing scheme.
Oh, is it?
Just so I know who's done what. So I'll actually be sending you a mail merge with your addressing scheme on it. So the scoring will not work at all because it's going to be different addressing schemes for everyone.
Yeah.